Hey guys, it's Jessica Donegan. I'm here again with my dog Willa. And we were just chilling out around the house, having a good time. And I was searching the Kindle Unlimited, as you do when you're looking for something to read. And I stumbled across this really great find called Demon King by Elizabeth Briggs. This is an urban fantasy story that's set in Las Vegas, where humans, demons, and angels all seem to coexist together, although the humans don't know about these supernatural entities. In this story, a woman named Hannah is searching for her missing best friend. The police have been completely useless, so in a fit of desperation, she approaches a man by the name of Lucifer, who owns a very high-end hotel casino on the Las Vegas Strip, and seems to grant impossible favors for a price. So she meets with him and asks him to help her find her best friend. And Lucifer, he says yes, he is going to help Hannah, but only if Hannah will stay with him for 7 days and 7 nights. So we've got a mystery to solve and maybe a steamy romance on the scene. What really interested me about this story was right away this summary struck a chord with me. It reminded me so much of 2016's TV show Lucifer that I just knew I was going to have to read more and do further comparison. For those who don't know, the TV show Lucifer is loosely based off of Neil Gaiman's The Sandman's Lucifer character from there. They took that character, popped him out, and put him in his own spin-off TV show. And in this show, Lucifer's running a nightclub, and he is hanging out with humans and granting them seemingly impossible favors for a price when he meets a very straight-laced Detective Decker, who is having problems with her latest murder mystery, and Lucifer calls in some favors and helps her solve mysteries. And this becomes a reoccurring theme of their TV show. So a lot of you are probably thinking that having a Lucifer or a devil-themed character isn't enough to claim that one item, in this case the Demon King, is fan fiction of another, specifically the Lucifer TV show. And you would be totally right. There are thousands of works that use the devil or Lucifer in some form, and they all have very similar traits. Certainly, The Devil Came Down to Georgia as a song, I don't think was necessarily inspiration for the Lucifer we see in the TV show, just because one came before another. And the similar traits all by themselves that I've shown so far aren't enough to prove a link one to the other. And it's not really my goal to link one work to another in this particular show. I just want to point out quite a few similarities and where they jogged my mind to. And, I'm hoping that we all share this together and have a little fun. So, if just having a lot of very similar devilish characteristics, like doing favors for high prices, living an exorbitant lifestyle, running some form of bar, casino, nightclub, and solving mysteries with a straight-laced foil, and otherwise having some overindulging isn't enough for one to be linked to the other, since almost all devil characters share some form of this, then what made me think that Demon King was linked to 2016's Lucifer? I have to say, it is the actor Tom Ellis. In 2016 Lucifer, he plays the main character, and he's an amazing devil. Just everything about how he holds himself, how he speaks, and how wardrobe dressed him makes him perfect in that role. You really believe when you're watching the show that this man is embodying a kind of fun, mischievous devil. Someone that you probably would like to hang out with once in a while, but at the same time, you can see that he has some depths that could be dangerous or foreboding in the right situation. So that's a lot of presence and a lot of different complex things that Ellis portrayed in the show. And people really responded to it. In 2016, the show had mixed reviews, and the one saving grace was Ellis's portrayal of the main character. So if you were going to take one thing out of that show that was a success, it would be to take how Tom Ellis brought the devil to TV. And I think that Demon King really captures all the elements from Tom Ellis's performance. I'm going to read a segment from chapter 1 where Hannah first meets this devil, and this is her description of him. The man I've come to see leaned with one hand on one of those large windows, staring out at his domain like a brooding king, or a kingpin maybe. I could only see his profile, but it was striking enough to make my heart miss a beat. I catalogued him while I waited for his attention to land on me, as I didn't dare disturb such dark, dangerous perfection. An impeccable black suit framed broad shoulders and tapered down narrow hips before hugging a perfectly rounded ass. Sunlight-kissed, short, thick hair that looked almost black except for highlights of rich chocolate brown. Below that, perfectly trimmed dark stubble accentuated a chiseled jaw, leading up to the cheekbones of a god. Whatever I'd expected from the man they called the devil and Hush whispered, it had not been this. So, right away, the physical description of this character in Demon King is very similar to Tom Ellis and how he's dressed in Lucifer. But I hear what you're saying, they still haven't given a voice to his character. And right in the next section, he says, "Come to ask a favor?" His voice washed over me with a delicious British accent. They even share a British accent. They look the same. They live the same kind of lifestyle, one in Los Angeles and the other here in Vegas. And now they have the same foreign accent, an accent that is not native to the country they're staying in. These two characters are so similar. I can't imagine that one isn't based off the other. They look the same, they talk the same, they have the same kind of standard job and operating procedure. And it would make sense for a romance author to use Tom Ellis's performance, because one of the things that stood out is that women responded to his performance. They said that he had some kind of magnetic energy about him that made them want to keep watching. So right away, I love it. We're here to get that fan fiction, every woman's experience / fantasy with Tom Ellis's version of the devil from Lucifer. Right away in chapter 2, we go over to Lucifer's perspective. It's really stylish right now to hop between one person's head and another person's head on alternating chapters, but I don't always think it's the best way to keep tension. And for me, part of what could be powerful in this book is that we're not really sure what's going on with Lucas. I mean, is he the devil? Is he a monster? Is he just a guy with a lot of money and people? There's many options, and the novel doesn't give us time to explore them. Instead, we jump right into Lucifer's perspective, and it's spelled Lucifer, so we know that's his real name. And he immediately starts talking about she's back in reference to Hannah. So we know that he knows her from somewhere, and that Lucifer knows Hannah from somewhere, and that she is important to him. And we know that he is committed to keeping her, regardless of their 7-day, 7-night promise. And it just doesn't feel like a lot of mystery or tension, which is very different than the 2016 TV show, because that devil gives away as little as possible. He does openly admit that his full legal name is Lucifer Morningstar, and he does tell everyone he meets that he's the devil incarnate. But he does it with a joking twist of his lips, and no one ever believes him. And he doesn't give a full backstory. You know, it sort of unfolds as the season goes on, and granted, 5 seasons is more time than a 300-page book. So I guess they were able to build that into a slow build more so than this. I will say the way chapter 2 reads, the whole she's back, the reincarnation themes, the fated love situation going on, it has callbacks to some themes in the TV show. And we'll talk about those different plot lines and how I feel they smush them together into this one Hannah character arc when we get a little further in. But before we go too much farther, just so you know, spoiler warnings for seasons 1 through 5 in the Lucifer TV show. And coming in further to this, there'll be spoiler warnings for Demon King as well. So if you wanted to read either read the book or watch the show on your own without any spoilers, you should stop here and go look at those. And if you are already ready to dive further in, then stick with me and we'll talk about some more topics. So, now that we're further into chapter 2, one of the big things to know is some of Lucifer / Lucas's assistants. In the TV show, Lucifer has a bodyguard called Maze, and stylistically, she is very particular. She's got a distinctive tough girl style. She's a little bit grumpy. She's got kind of that like fun punk rock sort of feel to her that I really enjoyed in the show. I found her a great character, both her story arc, but also where she physically started out at. Was very compelling to me. Great actress. Was a big fan. And here in chapter 2, we get to meet Lucifer's bodyguard. And I'm just going to read a passage that describes Azael here. I hear she's back, Azael says, as she kicked her legs up on the table, showing off studded black leather boots. She was my top security official and my fiercest blade, able to wield any weapon with ease. Tight black leather was her armor of choice, and anger her fuel to fight. So, she seems to be a clone of Maze here as well. She likes to fight, she likes to wear leather, she can handle all kinds of blades, and she's Lucas's right-hand person. Exactly the same as Maze's for Lucifer. But Jessica, I hear some of you saying, just because 2 characters look alike doesn't make them the same personality, doesn't serve the same purpose. So, let me go ahead and share a little bit more here. I hear she's back, Azael said. Yes, and I need you to guard our new guest, I say. She's in my penthouse, and I can't allow her to leave it unless you're by her side. I want you protecting her at all times. Her face twisted with annoyance, but she nodded. She would never disobey a direct order from me, even if she didn't want to follow it. I leaned forward and caught her eye. I realized that being a bodyguard may seem beneath you, but in truth, I've given you the most important task of them all. Hannah's life will soon be in danger, and you're the only one I trust to keep her safe. Her annoyance faded, and she bowed her head. I won't fail you, my lord. What is her name now? Samuel asked. Okay, so, just in that little clip, we get the idea that Azael is really loyal. She takes her job very seriously, but she likes hard tasks. She doesn't like to be sent on things she thinks will be simple or boring. And she can have an attitude, particularly one that's a little bit grumpy or off-putting. All of these are perfect beats, point by point, that we see from the character Maze in Lucifer in season 1. So far, Azael and Maze are following a perfect arc of each other, just as Lucifer and Lucifer are following a perfect, like, sort of fun playboy arc with something darker, deeper going on underneath. I'm hoping, personally, going forward in this romance story, that we get even more of that, because what made the show in later seasons were these complex, deep turmoil and emotions, these big character arc realizations, and transformation from who the character was at one point to where they traveled to. Sometimes they did it at a frustratingly slow pace, or they dragged on certain elements longer than I would have liked in the show, but this is a 300-page book. So I feel like I have a better shot at getting a nice clean pace from someone who is fun but doesn't take other humans very seriously, to someone who still keeps that little light levity, mischievousness, but starts to really care about at least a few specific humans, and get more involved and put themselves out there to really connect and relate to others. And in particular, I'm excited about it because while you love to see that character growth in almost any story, it's especially satisfying in a romance, where you're intended to be the stand-in person who drew this other person out. So chapter 3 is what I would call a filler chapter. There's not a lot of anything new going on. Hannah seeks reassurance from Lucas that he's actually going to find her friend Brandy, and she asks more about what they're going to do over the next 7 days. Lucas has already assured her that nothing sexual will happen unless Hannah decides that she wants to go ahead and do that. So he's allowing for natural romance to flow, although he heavily implies that she's going to be into it by the 7th day. So there's deep seduction plotline going on. And he decides that the 7 nights they spend together are going to be based off the 7 deadly sins, which I really like as a concept because it relates back to other biblical mythologies and a common store of knowledge surrounding the devil. But I don't know how well it can be executed. The 7 deadly sins aren't traditionally meant to be romantic. I don't know how you can create these date nights with those themes and be romantic. Although I guess if you were going to do it anywhere, Vegas is a great scene or a great setting for that. So Demon King's got a lot going on that could be helpful there. I also like Demon King's attempt to tie in other biblical references or Judeo-Christian mythology along with the Lucifer idea. You can see the same thing in most shows or movies or books that have adaptations of the devil in them, but it's still cool. Okay, so now we're actually going on the date. Hannah and Lucas got in the car, and tonight's first sin they're going to share in is gluttony. So they're going to a 6-course fine dining meal. The restaurant seems nice enough. It's very pretty. They implement some traditionally Vegas things, like even though they don't speak directly about the Bellagio Hotel, they're at a restaurant that has fountains that seem to work like the Bellagio Hotel. Only instead of just doing the one water show where the lights in the water go to a certain kind of music, these fountains are programmed for a whole bunch of different songs and you can pick them out. So the 6-course meal was already pre-chosen by Lucifer. That's a little bit of a red flag warning to me about having an overbearing boyfriend or significant other. Sometimes men do this kind of thing to try and impress you with their taste or with their culinary knowledge. I haven't personally experienced it, but I could see an argument for it like that. However, I think there's always benefit in getting to know your date through what they choose on the menu. It lets you know more about what they like and what they don't like, and sometimes it can give you a little insight into their personality as well. And I think that could have been a great opportunity within this book too, both for Lucifer to pick foods for himself that, apple-themed things, or things that are too sweet, or very spicy, implying that he is used to hot temperatures. All of this could have been fun, playful calls to point that he might be the devil. And on the other side, where we have Hannah, who's supposed to be a more innocent, plain character, she could be picking things on the menu that are very simple. Maybe she could pick something on the menu that was the only thing that wasn't in French. So it's the only food item she recognizes. Or she could make some kind of comment about how they don't even serve fries. Just little things like that could have given us more information about these characters without displaying it. And it could have avoided this, I have a preset 6-course menu thing, which is very high-handed. I don't like it. It's not endearing, and I don't think it's necessarily reminiscent of a devil character either, so it's not even something you can pin off of. You can pin on the fact that Lucas is based off of some version of the devil. I also want to give attention to the descriptions of the food going on here. So, just as a direct quote, "A second later, another man in uniform brought out some toasted bread with fancy little tomatoes drizzled in sauce. Our first course. I grabbed a piece of bread and nibbled at it, ultra aware of where to put my hands. Anywhere but the dress. Don't want to ruin the thing before giving it back to Lucas." Okay, so I don't think the description on the food was very good. It wasn't appetizing. Like, are we just talking about a toasted bread with a tomato and some balsamic drizzle? I understand that Hannah doesn't know a lot about fancy dining. She's already told us that. But maybe then she's not the right character perspective to see this date from. Or maybe the server can just announce what he's serving, since we already know that Lucifer chose the food without any input from Hannah. And that way, we could live vicariously through her what kind of food she's having on the 6-course meal. And I also want to call out that she was concerned she couldn't eat all 6 courses. If each course is going to be small, be like a little croissantini of toasted bread, she's going to eat 6 courses and still be hungry. That's not gluttony. I'm looking for that very fancy food at fine dining in Vegas. I've had the privilege of eating fine dining in Vegas, and it's top notch. It's next level. So she did a great job describing the place like that, but I'm not getting the same description on the food. And to me, in a restaurant, the most important part is the food and quality of service. So just a miss there. I'm not feeling the romantic dating vibe, and I'm certainly not feeling that swept off your feet, amazing date energy that I'm looking for in a romance right now. So now Lucas and Hannah are making small talk, and it's all information that we, the readers, already know, because chapter 3, Hannah explains where she came from, what she does for work, who her friend Brandy is, and why she's worried about her. So all this information I already know. And now I'm listening to her tell it to Lucas. So it's not great first date night conversation. It's not new information to me. I'm a little frustrated right now with this chapter. It's letting me down. And it's just too bad, because there's a little bit this isn't fair to Demon King. I like the show Lucifer. It evoked that image for me. It evoked the cloak of Lucifer quality. And it made me expect things that I'm not getting 4 chapters in. I'm just worried about it. Also, we learn that Hannah hasn't been in any serious relationships. She's in her early to mid-20s and no serious relationships. That feels very unbelievable. I don't know anyone who made it to their early to mid-20s and didn't date anyone, or have a first love, or a serious crush, or something like that. She's not a sheltered person, or like from a sheltered, self-isolating community. They do portray her as pretty innocent, but this is beyond it. And it's asking me a lot to suspend my disbelief as her as a character that innocent. And it's also a shame, because up until this point in time, I was imagining Hannah as the stand-in for Detective Decker in Lucifer, they're both described in ways where visually they're very similar. But Detective Decker is a real human woman. You know, she, in the show, before she became a detective, she was an actress, and she was in like a raunchy movie that tanked her career. And she gets teased on the force about it a lot because people know that she was in this raunchy movie. She's also a detective that has like trouble letting go of cases, even when they're solved, if she doesn't feel that they add up and are right. She's a little bit uptight. She sometimes is morally preachy, and that's a great foil for Lucifer in the show. You know, the two play off each other. But Hannah isn't giving Lucas anything to play off of in this moment. She's got like that overly innocent, I don't drink, I've never had a boyfriend, this is my first time in Vegas, I have no experience in a fancy place. So it can be fun to introduce her to fancier things, it can be fun to spoil her, and it can be fun as us as the readers to go along with her for the spoiling. But if you're not going to really describe it, like the descriptions of the places here are phenomenal. I need to see some of that in food, in smells, in music, just to bring us to that. And that's not enough. I need to see that she has something else going on in her life, something I can relate to. Right now, what I get from her is that she's struggling, which a lot of people, myself included, can relate to financially struggling. She's worried for a friend, and she's gone out on a limb for them, which again is admirable and relatable, but it's not something for Lucas to work off of, for him to grow with or push back on. So I'm just looking for that little extra that makes Hannah from a blank slate to a character I can root for. And we're only 4 chapters in, so she could still have that moment. I'm just not seeing it right away. And it's a little disappointing because I got action and things moving forward plot-wise, but I'm not getting character development. And if you've got a romance scenario going on, I need to see chemistry with the characters, which means I need some kind of character to work with. So I just want to read this little passage of the conversation between Hannah and Lucas to give you a better idea about what's going on. Is that why they call you the King of Las Vegas? One of the reasons. He paused before sipping his wine. But it's not what you really want to know, is it? You want to know why they call me the devil. My face grew warm, embarrassed that my thoughts were so obvious, or that he could read me so easily. Of course that was what I wanted to know. I'd heard those whispers, the ones people muttered when they thought I'd turned away or was no longer listening. There were always rumors about what happened to people who crossed him. Why do they? His eyes flashed dark with humor for a second before he answered, because I am the devil. My true name is Lucifer. I couldn't help but laugh. Seriously? That's your birth name? No wonder you go by Lucas. Your parents must have hated you. My father certainly does, but that's besides the point. I am the Lucifer, formerly known as the Lightbringer, also called Satan, the Prince of Darkness, Father of Lies, King of Hell, and a number of other titles people may have bestowed upon me over the years. My laughter faded as I realized that he was completely serious. I'm sorry. What? So this is an interesting scene because it is Lucas very early on stating that he's the devil to Hannah. 4th chapter is very early. And in the first season of Lucifer, Lucifer tells Detective Decker that he's the devil in the 1st episode, the 2nd episode. I think he continually tells her all the way through the 4th episode before it starts to take for her. And in that show, it's a bit of a back and forth game. She doesn't take him seriously. She thinks he legally changed his name to mess with people. Here, our character is confused and a little concerned. I understand why she's concerned. She's living with a guy that she thinks might be mentally unstable, and she's pinned all her hopes of finding a friend on him. But I'm not getting that from their conversation or from the action happening in between this conversation. I'm not getting that like sick feelings of dread or a sense of uncertainty. I want more from these characters than I'm getting. You know, right now it's starting to feel a little bit like a pale imitation of Lucifer. It's not stepping out and being its own thing, and it's not mimicking the original enough to give me satisfaction. It's sort of feels like it's in a shadow and it's not coming out. So I'm hoping for that to change. I'm hoping for this development about admitting who he is to lead to some kind of conflict, or for her to own it and for them to go forward into the supernatural world. Although I feel it's a little early to start that supernatural journey right now. So we're at chapter 5, and we're from Lucas's perspective. It's the next day. He's confused about what went wrong on his date last night. Hannah apparently became very quiet and closed off after he revealed he was the devil, and Lucas doesn't understand why she would be that way. He doesn't understand why she doesn't believe him. He doesn't understand why she would be nervous around someone who claimed to be the devil. Which makes me think Lucas isn't very smart, or he doesn't spend a lot of time with other non-mortal beings, or with other mortal beings, I should say. You know, because you can't just come out and say you're the devil. People will think that you're crazy or unhinged, or that you're joking with them. And if you play that joke too long, or if you're really not joking with them, you're going to make them uncomfortable. They're not going to know how to react to you or respond to you. And if they thought even for a second you were telling the truth, they would be even more uncomfortable than if they thought that you were just not all there. So it's interesting that he thought it was a smart move to tell her first night that he's the devil. And it's not a great sign that he wasn't smart enough to realize that might be a hiccup in their road to romance. Also, it's becoming clear that a lot of these other side henchmen I haven't mentioned are going to be important. As far as I can tell, there's this dude Sam, who's second in command. He has no character traits, but he does a lot of detective work for Lucas. That's disappointing in itself, because part of the joy of Lucifer, the TV show, is watching him interact with people and do digging and research. And here he signs it to Sam to do for him, which I guess is a power play because he doesn't have to do the work, but it's not very interesting for the mystery part to just be happening in the background. We just know by the end of the show that Brandy's going to show up and be fine, but we won't find out how they got to that. Or we will, but it'll all be through exposition. There's also this guy Galadriel, and I don't know why he's important yet, but he keeps coming up. So I'm starting to take note of him. There's a whole lot more supernatural characters here than there were in the show, and I think it's overwhelming the mortal cast, to be honest. It's better if you're going to do urban fantasy where you're introducing supernatural beings to have more humans than supernatural beings, or to make the supernatural beings more relatable to humans, because we need an entry point into this world. You know, I'm not a demon or an angel. I don't have that perspective. I have my human perspective. And I need you to introduce me more slowly to these other beings with different perspectives, so they can kind of grow on me, and I can see where they're coming from, and I can learn about their culture in a more organic way. Right now, I feel like I've just been thrown into this council, and even though I'm familiar with Judeo-Christian mythology, so I'm familiar with some of the names of the fallen angels, I'm familiar with the fight between the devil and God and how those angels fell and why they would be in hell. You know, I know all that information, I have all that lore going on. I still would have liked to see how they took that lore and made it their own in this story, how they made that unique to this book, as opposed to just the standard boilerplate of information that I have at my fingertips. Also, this version of Lucifer seems to be really impatient and not well planned out. When Hannah comes out for the morning, he announces they're going to do their date dayside. They're going to have a day date, which can be really fun and romantic, doing a full day together, really can be awesome. I love day dates, but if you just came off of an evening date where you admitted that you were the devil and she didn't take it well, she probably doesn't want to spend all day with you. And if you had, separated from her to do work or to go look for her friend like you promised, that would give her time to stew, time to cool down, time for her to get to know Azrael, who's guarding her, which could be really fun. It could give us time for her and Azrael to bond, or it could give us time for her to find that prickly exterior more unnerving, really wind Hannah up, create a problem that Lucas has to solve. All that tension builds to a head and then he has to do something about it. And meanwhile, we could have followed Lucas around while he actually looked for Brandy. Maybe him and Samuel, went sleuthing together. Samuel does this most of the time, but Lucas got involved today. And then Samuel continues when he's dating Hannah. Maybe that would have been a better way to distribute the labor, so we could have been part of the mystery more than we are right now. Also, today's sin is going to be greed, and how they're going to handle that sin is by going on a shopping trip. I hate that. I don't understand how greed and shopping work together in a way that's attractive. Like, being greedy or having greed means you want everything. And even if Lucifer buys Hannah everything, it doesn't make her want it. And it doesn't make her greedy for accepting things that he gives her. The whole concept doesn't work to me. And in some ways, taking her on a trip where Lucas keeps insisting on buying things for her that she is overwhelmed by and doesn't necessarily want or know how she'll use, just proves how not greedy she is, and doesn't encourage her to sin or show her how being on the dark side is fun and wild. It just shows that she's a small town girl overwhelmed with what's going on in Vegas. I just don't think that's special. So there's a whole chapter on shopping, and they go over a long list of brand names and kinds of clothes and baubles, none of which interested me at all. I didn't like it. There's one scene where Lucas goes out to handle a confrontation with a guy, and he shows some supernatural strength. It makes Hannah anxious because it reminds her of that conversation they had last night, but she shakes it off. And then she goes back to the place, and her room is filled with flowers, which is actually a really sweet gesture because Hannah owns a florist shop at home, and she talked about being homesick. So I liked that Lucas finally got the hint that he needed to empathize with her and bring her something that was familiar and help ground her where she is now. What I don't like about this moment is it leads Hannah to worrying about the safety of her stuff in her room and whether or not she's safe to be alone in her room because people can enter and exit at will. It's just odd that it pops up now. That's true if you stay at a hotel too, that the staff can go in and out of your room. And I understand why you might be concerned about it, but it's an odd detail to place in your romance novel. And I think this is part of where I get the feeling that Hannah is a bit of a shallow character meant to be like a self-insert, where any woman who reads this can pretend they're Hannah and pretend that Tom Ellis as the devil is wooing them. I'm not getting the full arc of Tom Ellis's Lucifer from this, but I'm getting all the shallow elements. All the shallow elements are hitting. And I'm not getting anything from Hannah, which makes me think she's just there for me to pretend I'm her. It's interesting because it makes me more certain this is fan fiction than if the book were more loyal to the show. If it had more complexity and intrigue and build-up, then I'd be more certain it was its own thing, even though that would make it closer to the show. The fact that it lacks those things, even though it makes it distinct, also makes me feel just like there was a lack of care and detail. The kind of lack of care and detail one might put in a fan fiction because your reader already knows these other details. You don't need to write them or provide them because it's already in my head. You know, when I read fan fiction, I don't expect you to describe characters that I already know from a book series. I don't expect you to explain backstories and circumstances I already know from a book series. I don't expect you to explain emotional connections or to show that this character is smart. I already got all that from the series, and I already know I like this person and I'm invested in them. I'm getting the same kind of shallowness here, and I can't tell if the book is just not well thought out or if that's because this is really supposed to be a cash-in on a fanfic theme that you would see for Lucifer. But it is interesting either way. Also, the day goes on and they do go out at night. So the date during the day was themed, and nighttime now they're just going out and having a good time. They go to Lucifer's nightclub that's on the top of his casino, and Hannah's favorite band is playing. And her favorite band is called the Hellions. So that's another little nod or wink to the devil theme that's going on. And they're having a good time at first when they get attacked. And the way the attack plays out, Hannah sees a supernatural being in an obviously non-human form. It throws her off the building, and Lucas jumps off, releases his wings, and saves her. So now we're at chapter 6, and we have to face the reality for sure that Lucas is the devil, or that Hannah has come unraveled and is having a mental breakdown. These are her only two options at this point. Any other mystery that was hinted at, or the suggestion of a push-pull, is he the devil, isn't he the devil, is gone. We, the reader, and Hannah as the character are both 100% certain that he is the devil at this point in time. And, it's hard to deny when a guy jumps off a skyscraper and grows wings and lifts you from falling to your death and flies you back to the top of a skyscraper that something supernatural is happening. I guess he could not be the devil still. He could be an angel or a lesser fallen angel. But, when you discover that level of information, does it really matter where he is in the hierarchy at this point? It's just kind of like, I have to deal with the fact that these supernatural beings exist and that I promised to stay with this dude for 5 more nights. So, sitting tight here and hoping I don't get attacked again. Minor point, but Lucas keeps trying to force alcohol on Hannah. This is the 3rd or the 4th time in less than 3 days that he's tried to give her a drink. And every time he does it, she tells him that she does not drink. Period. Full stop. Ever. Why does he keep trying to hand her alcohol? And the worst part about it is on this page, she says, the last thing I need for this revelation is to be muddled by alcohol. And Lucas says, many humans find life preferable when muddled by alcohol. Alas, it has no effect on me. He took a sip of whiskey anyways. Mainly because I liked the taste. The burn reminded me of hell. So, not only is Lucas always trying to get her drunk, but all these times he's drinking, he's completely sober the whole time. And he has no respect for the fact she doesn't drink, and this girl that he says he loves with and is going to be with forever, he can't remember little details about what's important. And that really bothers me. I'm not okay with that. This is bad writing, bad character. Don't like it. Another thing I want to call out about Hannah and Lucas's relationship here is that the devil is holding things back from her, which makes sense. He has a lot of information. You don't want to give her information overload. But he's also not pursuing leads from her. At one point in time, she asked if she knew him before the accident, and that's why he's so familiar. And he says, the accident? But he just lets that go. So Hannah implied heavily she has significant amnesia from some kind of accident, and instead of pursuing that, the devil doesn't do that. Or here, he says, I debated telling her how she played into it all, but she seemed shell-shocked enough as it was. She'd had enough for tonight. Soon she would know everything, with no more secrets between us, and I longed for that day, but she needed time to process everything first. I stepped forward and offered her my hand. I can tell you have more questions, but I think it's time you got some rest. If you've had an eventful night. So he doesn't pursue critical information he needs from her, and he doesn't give her the information she needs to make smart choices either. And this is very frustrating. It doesn't seem like he's doing a good job pursuing, it doesn't seem like Lucas is doing a good job pursuing what he wants right now. You know, he says he wants to be in a relationship with Hannah, and he wants to be with her as long as he can, as much time as he has. And that people seem to be after her. That's why they were attacked tonight. They wanted to kill her. But he's not giving her information she needs to know to keep herself safe. And he's not getting information from her that he needs to know for context on how to better keep her safe either. Or to see if she has a history with someone else, or someone else has gotten to her first. So, it's the next day, and instead of speaking with Hannah more about the whole I'm the devil and we're connected somehow part of the story, Lucas takes Hannah to a raceway, and he, Azrael and Gladriel and Hannah all race along the track and enjoy the different race car opportunities there. And while they're relaxing and having a good time, Sam, Lucas's number 2, comes in and announces that he knows exactly where Hannah's friend Brandy is and his son. Apparently, Brandy and his son went missing together. So, Azrael takes Hannah back, and Lucifer decides that he's going to lead the charge to save Brandy. Hannah is understandably upset that she's not going to be there when Brandy is freed, and that she doesn't have or receive a lot of information about Brandy except that they're going to retrieve her tonight. It's just a strange scene. There's a big action piece coming together, but our two main characters, Lucas and Hannah, have not been involved at all leading up to this. They took no part in this except for Hannah coming and announcing her friend was missing. The structure of this story is very odd. That's all I've got right now. So it's evening time. Lucas, Sam, an army of Lilem, which are a form of incubus/sex demon, all attack a motel that is being guarded by shapeshifters. They have a long and pointless battle. Wasn't interested in it. Sorry, it didn't captivate me. And when they're done, they retrieve Sam's son and Brandy. And Sam's son is part fallen angel and part sex demon. He has feelings for Brandy, but he can't act on them because sex demons can only have sex with humans once. And if they have sex with them a second time, they kill them. I don't know. Those are the rules. I didn't make them up. So they separate, and Brandy gets moved in to the same hotel where she and Hannah will get to meet up the next day. The next date that Lucifer does is going to be between Hannah and Brandy. It's going to be Sloth. And this is actually probably the best execution of the 7 deadly sins in the whole book, because it's a spa day between Brandy and Hannah. And even with a fully booked spa day, Lucas makes sure to put the treatment spaced out so that Brandy and Hannah have time to talk, catch up, and time just to really drink champagne and have some delicious fruit platters. Definitely the best embodiment of one of the 7 deadly sins, and the best date that I've seen so far. Not date idea per se, but description and execution of the date in writing. At this point in time, Brandy's purpose is fulfilled and she's going to go back home. I wish there was more to her. She's just kind of like a supportive best friend who, I don't know, existed as a MacGuffin. Could have been anything. It's weird that you used a person as the MacGuffin to bring this all together. Okay, we're about to go into fast summary mode. Mostly because a lot of this is not related to Lucifer, the TV show, and it didn't captivate me, this part of the story. I really, at this point in time, was pushing through because there were some dangling plot threads that I needed answers to, even if I didn't like how it was coming together. So, things that are happening. Brandy went home. Some more dates happen and some more attacks on Hannah happen. Also, Gladriel finally does something that makes him noteworthy. He stops and he talks to Hannah and tells her that he knew her in a previous life. Also, we find out the whole why Lucifer and Hannah are connected. Apparently, way back in the day, Lucifer, when he was going by Lucifer, seduced Adam's wife, Eve, away from him. And Adam was an abusive husband, so that makes it okay. And Hannah is a reincarnation of Eve. The whole reason the Eve and Lucifer thing didn't work out is because Adam found out and he came and he killed Eve in a jealous rage. And this created a curse cycle where Lucifer continues to find Eve's soul reincarnated. They have a little bit of time together, and then Adam pops out of a bush and kills Eve again, and the whole cycle starts over and over again. This to me was notable because it's a mashup of a theme in season 3 and season 4. So in season 3 of Lucifer, huge spoiler alert here, Cain shows up, and we find out that Cain is cursed to live forever, and he's trying to find a way to die, and that's a punishment for killing his brother. So the same kind of, it's very similar that Eve is cursed to die over and over again for cheating, and Adam keeps reincarnating and killing her. And it's also interesting because it uses Adam and Eve instead of Cain and Abel, and they're all in the same family there. And then season 4, Eve actually entered the Lucifer show, and in that season we found out that Eve and Lucifer did have an affair, although it wasn't for the same reasons. I won't get into details. The point is that Eve and Lucifer in that TV show had an affair, and Lucifer comes down from heaven and tries to start dating him again. So I'm looking at this from a fanfiction perspective, and I'm seeing like, hey, let's do that cool curse thing I saw in season 3. And I really like that Eve character from season 4. So instead of her just being a girlfriend that is a love rival for Decker, let's go ahead and make her the one true love for Lucifer forever. Let's put her in there. Let's make them mates or something and continue this reincarnation theme. It'll be romantic. It'll be tragic. It's very, very, very fanfiction-y, the whole 9 yards, especially matching up those two plot lines together and putting them in. It could just be an original idea too. I don't want to take that away. It totally is possible. But it doesn't feel that way the way the information is presented. But anyways, yeah, Hannah, reincarnation of Eve, continually getting killed by Adam, doomed to that for all eternity, taking a little bit of Lucifer's heart every time she dies in his arms. Last known life, Gladriel and her were buddies. She was a fallen angel. She got killed by an angel, and Gladriel got vengeance for it, and he's sad because apparently him and fallen angel girl were friends. Then we do Halloween Ball, and in Halloween Ball, Lucifer brutally murders some people because they hurt Brandy, Hannah's friends, and Hannah can't take that. She wasn't prepped for that kind of murder, so she runs away and is taken by an angel, Josiel. Some more stuff with that happens that's not really worth mentioning. The point is, eventually we find out that eventually Hannah gets the chance to decide she does want to be with Lucifer, even if she's going to die, and even if Lucifer's got like some violent anger management issues they're going to have to work on together. So she drives back to Vegas to be with him. Whew. Finally, we're at a climactic ending. And I won't give you any more information because this book is part 1 in a series and it ends on a cliffhanger. So anything I say is going to be unsatisfying. But, yes. That's where we are with the show and where we are with this book. Okay, so let's go ahead and wrap this video up. It's been a long one. The book was long. 5 seasons of a show are long. The end question, is Demon King fan fiction of Lucifer, the TV show? And the answer is, maybe. There are some elements that are too similar to be comfortable with. Can you see it? Way too similar. How Lucifer looks in the show and in the book, how his first lieutenant and female guardian looks, and how she acts. She is a dead-on ringer. And probably she's a dead ringer because we don't get a lot of her in this first book. Maybe in other books she'll develop out more to her own character. Hannah looks a lot like Detective Decker and has a backstory similar to the Eve character in season 4. So all of those elements combined to share a lot with the TV show. Still, there's also a lot of elements that are wholly original. There's this council of demons and a demon hierarchy, and I didn't get into it because it didn't pique my interest personally. But how Lucifer in the book Demon King rules hell and how the hierarchy is very different from either biblical standpoints or from the TV show. So that is sort of its own thing. It's not entirely out of a fan fiction's realm to make its own thing, to have just like this element or section that's very detailed that the fan fiction author came up with all on their own. So it still could be heavily influenced or fanfic-y with unique elements. Or it could be its own thing, and all of these coincidences I've noticed could be in my head, or could just be happenstance. I mean, we don't all have completely unique ideas unrelated to everyone else all at the same time. So it's entirely possible that Lucifer was doing its own thing and Demon King is doing its own thing. And anything I noticed is overlap based on my personal experience and not based on any author intention or writer intention. So make up your own mind, and you know, I would highly recommend the TV show Lucifer. And if any of this story or melodrama piqued your interest, I would check out Demon King by Elizabeth Briggs as well. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. It's really good. Parts of it anyways are really good. Obviously, there were parts that I didn't care for, but that's true with any book. But yeah, thanks for sticking with me all the way through this video. I know it was long. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like. Give me a comment, tell me what your favorite part was. Let me know if you thought this was fan fiction or if you thought this was an original work. Recommend me something else to read. And if you want to see more like this, let me know. Alright, thanks guys. Have a great day.